Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. You know how the show Gossip Girl always made it seem like Dan and his family were like the poor of the poor, as if they were just a bunch of street rats that had no business at an expensive private school in Manhattan, because they were from Brooklyn. Yuck. Meanwhile, the loft that the Humphreys owned in Brooklyn cost millions of dollars. Just look at the Zillow listings these days in Dumbo, Brooklyn. These are not cheap places. And with the amount of space that we see Dan, his dad Rufus, and Jenny enjoying during Gossip Girl, plus the expensive private school tuition, we know that was not coming from a minimum wage paycheck. Not to mention, Dan's dad was a former rock star who now owns an art gallery. Not exactly the venture you take when you're slumming it. And yeah, rock stars can blow through their cash just like anyone else can, but if he really had a one-hit wonder like he says he did, then he potentially made millions of dollars from one song, just like Gautier did with Somebody That I Used to Know, or Vanilla Ice did with Ice Ice Baby. Ice, Ice Baby. Basically what I'm saying is what Gossip Girl fans have been saying for a while now, and that is that Dan is not really poor.
The Humphreys thought they were broke when they were literally living in this like $1 million loft in Brooklyn or Dumbo or whatever. Oh, in New York, what is this, like millions of dollars? Be so for real.
I don't know, I think she might be a tad overwhelmed by the glitz and the glamour of the Humphrey lifestyle.
But I guess that it is all a matter of comparison, in the same way that if you make $60,000 a year in the US, then you are part of the richest 1% of the world's population. Wealth at the upper end is just as relative. Dan and the Humphreys aren't poor, but compared to the other main characters of Gossip Girl like Serena, Blair, Chuck, and Nate, holy crap, he might as well be Oliver Twist.
Please, sir, I want some more.
And that brings me to the purpose of today's video, which is to financially audit the characters of Gossip Girl. I want to know how rich these kids really are, how much they're spending on their lavish lifestyles, and if they can truly stay rich forever. I mean, a trust fund has to end at some point, right? If you like these kinds of character financial audits, I have several others like my audits covering Carrie Bradshaw, the Friends gang, and most recently, Emily in Paris. So go check out those videos after you watch this one, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Okay, to start the financial audit, which will consist of Serena, Blair, Nate, Chuck, and Dan, let's finish up real quick on Dan Humphrey. Dan lived in a multi-million-dollar loft with his family. His dad Rufus seems to have an obsession with making waffles, and Dan attended St. Jude's School of Boys on a partial scholarship. Elite private schools in New York are not cheap. They can go for around $30,000 a year. So let's say Dan received a 50% scholarship. That's still a hefty $15,000 every school year just for high school. That is more than the average college tuition at a US public university. Speaking of which, Dan ends up going to NYU for college, which had a tuition of around $36,000 in 2009. Tuition, by the way, just covers the learning costs, not even beginning to cover things like books or room and board or other miscellaneous costs associated with college. Beyond education costs, I wouldn't really say that Dan is a crazy spender. His style is pretty meh. It's a lot of modest flannels and jeans, and for the most part, Dan isn't really into conspicuous consumption, even in the later seasons when he makes some more money after publishing his book, or when his dad Rufus marries Lily Vanderwoodson. One thing he maybe should have spent more money on is therapy for his bizarre split personality, because, spoiler alert, if he really is Gossip Girl, why the hell does he react like this in private at Gossip Girl's updates? And not to hate on Dan's creative skills here, but he also could have really used a more polished website for his gossip empire. If I were him, I would have just used Squarespace, which happens to be today's sponsor. Here is what Dan could have done with his Gossip Girl site if he'd used Squarespace to help. He could have found polished website templates that were made just for blogging that would allow him to offer paid memberships and, of course, a contact form so that all the Upper Eastsiders can submit their juicy rumors. With just a click of a button, Dan could pick out his ideal template, swap out the color scheme, drag and drop website elements to make the perfect blend of cute and snark that he wants to see, and, of course, as a blogger, he can manage all of his posts from one place. He can even send out an email newsletter with Squarespace, and then, of course, course, make more surprised reactions despite the fact that no one is around him. Squarespace uses design intelligence that empowers anyone to build a beautiful, more personalized website tailored to their unique needs. They also have Squarespace Payments, which makes it incredibly easy to manage your customers' payments all in one place. Whether you're starting your own gossip website, you're running a business, or you just want a personal website to host your portfolio, Squarespace is there. And right now you can head to squarespace.com/Cara Nicole to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using Cara Nicole. That's squarespace.com/Cara Nicole, and a huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. All right, so one thing that we do see Dan spend money on is trying to impress Serena. Remember their first date ever? He takes her to some fancy schmancy restaurant that to him costs a fortune. So much so that he doesn't even buy himself an entree so that the money can go towards Serena's meal.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we'll just get the check, please.
Actually, I already took care of that earlier.
What?
Yeah, I just charged it on my mom's card. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
You know, I can pay.
Now, Serena ends up paying for it, but it's not the last time that Dan tries to impress her. Like when he buys a Vespa, which can cost around $3,000 to $8,000. Though I pose to you a controversial question I would love your take on in the comments. Was Dan truly in love with Serena? Or was he just in love with Serena's lifestyle, with what she represented? Did this supposedly I'm above it all guy secretly and desperately want to be part of the elite class? Let me know your thoughts.
I know you like the idea of saying you live in an LES walk-up, but we both know you well enough to know you secretly long for a condo in the West Village.
Fine, a doorman will be nice, but I'll just lie about how much rent I pay.
And speaking of Serena's lifestyle, hers was certainly more extravagant and expensive. We see Serena living in wildly luxurious places throughout the series, including the New York Palace Hotel where she's living at the very start of season 1. That hotel, which is self-described as New York City's most prestigious address, goes for around $700 a night, and that is just for a basic room that commoners like us might think to enjoy. For Serena, she's probably enjoying at minimum a 1-bedroom suite, which according to the Palace's booking website can be well over $1,000 a night. If Serena is living there full time, that is $30,000 a month she's spending just on living in a hotel. We know Serena rides taxis everywhere. She and the other Gossip Girl characters from here on out are not public transport people, but honestly that's probably chump change for her. Because here is what we know about Serena and the Vanderwoodsons. Lily, her ever-glamorous mom, is from the Rhodes family, the heir to a record label fortune. As this Bustle article that puts Lily at a $1 to $2 billion net worth puts it, Lily was, quote, born into money, married into money, and made money on her own accord. I can promise you, this woman does not know how much a banana costs at the grocery store. And just like how her mom probably has no idea the cost of basic groceries, uber wealth has distorted what normal spending behavior is to Serena. Like when she gifts Dan a $25,000 watch for Christmas.
I noticed the other day that you don't wear a watch, and then it occurred to me it's because you don't have a watch. You don't like it, you want the brown band.
$25,000 is literally enough to buy a brand new car, pay for all your groceries for a year, and probably still have enough left over to max out your Roth IRA for the year. And yet, Serena is just handing it over the way that I would hand over a $20 bracelet from Target. Dan, by the way, does not accept the gift because of the hefty price tag. Not surprising, since the awkward topic of receiving overly expensive gifts from friends is a whole think piece niche in itself. Serena does many of the ultra-rich kid staples like vacationing in the Hamptons, traveling to Paris on a whim with Blair, never having a consistent job, and of course shopping. Lots and lots of shopping. We already know from our other TV show financial audits, like the one I did on Carrie Bradshaw and Emily in Paris, that shopping is always in vogue on these shows. But where Carrie and Emily's wardrobes might not be very believable based on their average person incomes, Serena has trust fund money to afford items like a $395 neon yellow sweater that is very much see-through, or a $2,075 cocktail dress that will probably be worn once and then never seen again. Serena's style is chic and expensive, no doubt, but I would argue not nearly as wealth signaling as her mom Lily, who seems to have a Birkin or Kelly bag in every scene she's in. If you've seen my video on how designer brands keep you poor, you know that these bags are not cheap. Some of them go for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And apparently most of those bags were from the actress's personal collection, which which is crazy. Now, while Serena and Lily's fashion certainly signaled wealth, I think that Queen Bee Blair Waldorf was the true fashionista of the show.
Whoever said that money doesn't buy happiness didn't know where to shop.
Blair's style has inspired so many people's outfits over the years, with that blend of sophisticated, sexy, and preppy, and it makes sense that her fashion was always on point. In the show, Blair's mom is famous fashion designer Eleanor Waldorf, and her father is a lawyer from the famous Waldorf family. In old money versus new money terms, I've heard it said that Blair's mom is very much new money, and her dad is old money. According to the same Bustle article from before, Eleanor Waldorf is worth $500 to $700 million. You know, just a normal amount to have in a bank account, right? But despite the privilege she grew up in, you can't deny that Blair was a hustler. She was always working on something, whether it was sports, clubs, academics, or just social dominance.
I have an army to build, a school to take over, and girls to blackmail.
I'd argue Blair is the most ambitious of the group, and by the end of Gossip Girl, she's running her mom's fashion line. Nepo baby, obviously, but hey, at least she's working. That being said, the potential financial flaw I see in Blair is that she cares too much about perfection and perception. She wants to always be on top, and she loves exclusivity.
I'm the best of the best. I'm Blair Waldorf.
We see that just a few episodes into Gossip Girl with Blair's famous slumber party. She loves that only a few people can be invited, and she goes all out for the occasion. Expensive outfits, miniature beds, at-home spa staff. That one sleepover probably cost thousands of dollars. And I would argue that Blair's laser-focused desire for status led her to make the biggest financial mistake in the entire show, which was to marry Prince Louis. Yes, they had a cute and toxic relationship, but I think ultimately Blair loved the idea of being an actual princess. So the second she realized she made a mistake with the marriage, she needed to pay a dowry to get out. We don't know the exact cost of the dowry, but we do know that it was enough that it would have taken down Eleanor Waldorf's 9-figure business, and it took most of Chuck Bass's liquidity. Internet guesses range anywhere from $50 million to $500 million. Honestly, this sounds bad, and I do not condone cheating, but at that point, I'm just gonna accept the loveless royal marriage and accept that we can, both have affair partners. But Chuck Bass is not that guy.
I'm Chuck Bass.
Partly because dude is obsessed with Blair. Their relationship was the thing that kept me watching after season 3, and because he is an actual billionaire. Chuck is by far the richest of the Gossip Girl gang, with his late father Bart Bass being a self-made real estate tycoon. Chuck's family is based on the real-life Bass family that are worth $13.3 billion. When Bart died, Chuck inherited his dad's wealth and became the majority shareholder of Bass Industries. He's constantly dressed to the nines in expensive 3-piece suits worth thousands. Okay, well, sometimes dressed in nice suits. Admittedly, the boy has a unique fashion sense outside of suits, like the time he walked around looking like a red Teletubby. Chuck is also the only character we see that has a dedicated private limo for transportation. Everyone else seems to use cabs, which is like so peasanty of them. When I looked online for how much a private limo and driver costs, it seems to be around $1,000 to $2,000 a day. It makes me feel a lot less guilty about ever using an Uber. But Chuck's fatal flaw is Blair. He spends millions, possibly $500 million, just getting Blair out of her marriage to Prince Louis. That is insane. Like, I know it's a show, but these kids are like 20 years old, yet they're acting as if they're middle-aged characters on Succession with these money moves. Overall, Chuck is no stranger to excess. That's his whole shtick. He spends money like no one's business and often uses it to get his way or get out of sticky situations.
As much as I love the speech about not needing material things from a guy who has that much product in his hair, this party is about excess, not exposition.
I will say, though, that Chuck does evolve over the seasons, eventually becoming a mini real estate tycoon in his own right. He buys the Empire Hotel, he keeps the business growing, and he manages to outmaneuver his uncle and father when they try to oust him. To be honest, I kind of forgot about the whole dad faked his death thing until I started researching for this video. While I do think that Chuck's biggest financial risk is anytime he mixes money and love, Ultimately, the dude is a billionaire, and I don't think he's running out of money anytime soon. I don't feel as confident saying that, though, about Nate Archibald. Now, Nate is classic old money. His mom is from the Vanderbilt family, a family that in real life was once worth $185 billion. Nate's dad, on the other hand, is a new money investment banker who eventually is arrested and jailed for embezzlement. His dad's criminal mischief ends up affecting Nate's finances, like we see in season 1 when Nate discovers that one of his trust accounts goes from $200,000 to zero.
My trust seems to have a zero balance.
Oh, I thought you knew. That account was drained weeks ago.
The money problems get so bad that in season 2, Nate's family home is seized by the government, and Dan discovers that Nate has been sleeping on the floor, essentially homeless.
Whoever said you can't have it all must have known the Archibalds. Looks like poor little Nate is, yuck, poor.
From there, Nate ends up crashing with the Humphreys in Brooklyn for a while, and Nate's family financial troubles become a reoccurring theme in the show. Personally, I like to imagine that Nate and Dan spooned a bit during that time. But look, I feel bad for Nate, because yes, he's a privileged Nepo baby who looks like he was made in a Ralph Lauren laboratory, all the factors that make it really easy for us to want to hate the guy. But honestly, Nate seems like a pretty solid dude. Certainly a better guy than Chuck, far less pretentious than Dan, and by the end of the show, he's really found himself. By the end of the series, he is the chief of The Spectator, which is a newspaper, and a frontrunner for the mayor of New York City. It seems like his family's financial instability kind of woke him up from the apathy toward work that so many of the other rich characters have in the show.
I have an idea for you. Quit. Your boss is a bitch. Let's go get lunch.
Nate's work ethic and success is quite the turnaround from, and I say this lovingly, the lazy airhead that we saw at the beginning of Gossip Girl. Also, I'm so sorry, Nate, but just to drive the point home a little more, I need to show you guys this incredible edit that I found called Nate Archibald Doesn't Get It. Here's a clip.
I don't expect you to understand. What's that supposed to mean? What?
What? The what?
What?
Wait, what?
That video literally goes on for over a minute and a half, so if you want to see the whole thing, I'll link it down below. But other than that, I am going to call it there. That right there is the financial audit of the Gossip Girl characters. I also want to give a big shout out to my virtual assistant, Thea. She is a huge Gossip Girl fan, and she really helped me a lot with the research for this, so thank you. Quick plug, but if you're ever looking for a great virtual assistant, I've been using Magic to find mine. But yeah, let me know what characters on TV shows or even celebrities you want to see me financially audit next. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon for supporting this channel and those on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate you all, and I will see you next time. Bye!